Welcome to Everyday Passions, the show where my guests share one of their passions and how they've used that passion, actually maybe one or more of their passions, and how they've used that or those passions to impact or influence the lives of others. Now, my special guest today is Laura Staley. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here, Yvonne. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. It's my delight, and I know this is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I am Yvonne Jones, the Client Relations Specialist. Leaders and decision makers consult with me when they want to grow their business by creating profitable client relationships. I also am passionate about working with women 50 and wiser to help them combine their years of knowledge and experience along with their passion to create a business that they can grow with courage and confidence. So today, Laura is the founder of Cherish Your World, and she passionately supports people by guiding them to holistic transformations of space, heart, and life. Laura writes personal essays that are focused on self-discovery, Feng Shui, and emotional health. She's the author of Live Inspired, Let Go Courageously, and Live with Love, Transform Your Life with Feng Shui, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, so Laura, please correct me. And the book that I absolutely love, Cherish Your World gift book. So Laura, you know why I brought you here, because you have so much to share. And I want you to share this with our viewers or listeners. This, I always like to share that this is going to be on YouTube, and later on it's going to be part of a podcast. So how would you describe the one thing or the things that you intertwine that you are truly passionate about?
Wow. I love that question. And I guess it was embedded in your introduction, holistic transformation. And of course, people hear that and they may be like, well, what is that? And of course, then you went on to say, space, heart, mind. I would say that to me, that's about going from possibly the people that might be listening who have lived traumatized and terrified in their space. They just haven't felt home in a physical space or a physical environment for whatever reason. And maybe they haven't felt safe in their own skin and or learned to value themselves, right? And so in the process of that shift from trauma and fear to living in confidence and courage, the ways that you support entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
It's so beautiful that we're in this conversation, because I think, oh my gosh, this is exactly it. So that outer environment that might be filled with belongings that are not even healthy for you or remind you of difficult experiences. So so to have belongings in your physical space that you love, that inspire you, but also to have beautiful thoughts in your mind and learn to shed those limiting beliefs. And, that growing heart that is filled with love and appreciation and gratitude. At the same time, shedding from the heart space those things that may be unresolved. So those unresolved emotions that, interestingly enough, Yvonne, I found can be connected to the actual belongings in our physical space. Sometimes people will have things in their physical space that remind them of maybe even a trauma. They'll remind them of a grief that they haven't fully grieved. They'll feel obligated to hold on to something that isn't even theirs, right? I've heard from people who have literally said, gosh, I have things in my house that aren't even mine. And I can definitely relate to that, because how I came to the wisdom of Feng Shui was through the flood of a finished basement And I discovered in that journey and that difficulty and that challenge that I lived with belongings that I loathed, and they were hand-me-downs. And I was grateful because they had supported my life, but I didn't even know that I could have belongings, artwork, clothing, jewelry that inspired me, because the hand-me-downs that I loathed went deep. They included clothing, they included jewelry, so I didn't know who I was. I had disappeared, right? And completely lost my voice and my sense of, gosh, what are my tastes and preferences? I hardly knew, right? And so in that journey, I discovered this wisdom of Feng Shui, which simply stated is about enhancing your life by way of your physical space, using your physical space as a metaphor for transformation, for living with what you love, for living in safety and comfort and peace, and creating that physical space as a reflection of your inner world. So as you let go of maybe clutter, right, and those things that might be blocking the flow of your life, you can let go of the clutter in your mind, of those thoughts that you no longer need to think, and the clutter in your heart of maybe unresolved feelings or experiences that have gotten stuck from something way back there. So yeah, so it's kind of it's a cool way to look at one's life, and it's often a fresh perspective that comes from this long ago ancient wisdom that I just am passionate about sharing with people. I know it's made such a difference in my own life, and out of that joy and releasing these belongings that I loathed, right? I discovered, not that I rushed out and got things, but I discovered and asked myself, well, what is it that I love? And it was such a great question, because I had never really asked myself that question.
Wow.
So it's a question that I often ask the people that I work with, right? What do you love? What do you love in your home? What do you love about your life?
Mm-hmm. Now, do you find that's a good point to pause there, because there are a couple of things I noticed as you were answering the question. You talked about, and I made a couple of notes here. You mentioned trauma a couple of times. You mentioned safety, feeling safe. So what I gathered from that is that these things are very important to you. And so you have been able to transfer this and help to transform people who probably sometimes they forget that they even had these traumas, but they show up in other ways. Sort of like how things were in your basement, or things were in your surroundings that you didn't even remember, and you loathed them. You didn't like them, but you didn't think you could get rid of them.
Oh, exactly. Well, and I think I thought it was stuff. Right? I didn't even know that, that just this whole idea that I could live with furniture or artwork or jewelry that I loved was just this unbelievable aha moment. And I think I very much had lost myself and chosen to, in that feeling of unsafe, I was attempting to adopt what other people said I should be or do, or the kinds of things, the silverware I ought to use, the plates I ought to eat off of, and as though that somehow choosing somebody else's ideas would somehow make me safe, but I got lost. I became invisible. And sometimes that happens for people, right? They're working so hard to find safety, maybe outside of themselves. And so they'll surround themselves with things that they think will keep them safe.
But it really doesn't,
But
does
they
it?
don't. No, especially if one has disconnected from your heart and your voice and your preferences and the ideas that you came here to express or the life that you came here to live. Yeah. So, I mean, part of my story, and we were speaking of this earlier, as an example, I came from a family that education was very important, and I ended up earning a doctorate in teaching college students, which I'm really grateful to have had that experience. And then I chose to become a full-time parent, and I loved being a full-time parent. So in a way, my house wasn't a complete metaphor because I had chosen that even at a time when a lot of my friends were going right back to work right after having their children. But I, worked it out with my then husband for me to stay home full time because I felt so passionate about being a full-time parent. For me, that was a soul expression that to this day, I'm so grateful and have no regrets about. So I had begun taking that, that small step towards finding my voice. And yet here I had created a house of hand-me-downs. So it was just kind of fascinating to be in that contradiction, if you will, right?
Yeah, and I could see how that kind of contradiction, along with the other things that happened in your life, could allow you to basically lose yourself so that you felt like you had no voice at all and you weren't even sure who you were as a person. So,
Right.
Laura, was there a particular incident or a particular period in your life, something that created an awakening so that you now became aware that you needed to do something for you?
Oh, I think in the space of absolutely discovering that I had lost my voice. I loved being a mother, but your question, right? Like, who is Laura? Who is Laura even beyond being a mother?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved and was challenged deeply by the expression of motherhood and mothering my two small children, into their adulthood. And yet, what was my life beyond that? And honestly, in that moment, in that aha moment of looking around my house, was the opening to this understanding of this beautiful wisdom of Feng Shui. And it's that moment that I realized I could take action and fall in love with this ancient wisdom. And 4 years later, did the 7-day training. So, my former sister-in-law had given me the book. It was The Western Guide to Feng Shui, Room by Room. And I read it cover to cover. I just was so intrigued, and I fell in love with these ideas that were so practical that I could apply them pretty much when I walked back into my house. So I had been visiting family after the flood, about a month after the flood, we were visiting family. And, my then sister-in-law was just like, oh gosh, you have to read this book. And honestly, that awakening has, continued to nourish me every single day. Even my life now, when I relocated to North Carolina, just became another iteration of a physical space transformation and a life transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment of reading that book by Tara Catherine Collins, cover to cover, and even seeing in the back of the book that there was this offering of a 7-day training, which planted that seed, right? And even then I was like, oh, I'm this full-time mom. What would I do with my kids? All those kinds of things. And yet, 3 years later, I did the 7-day training. And then, months after that, I submitted all my materials. It was the best homework I had ever done in my life. And of course, here I'm the student, right? I love to learn. I'll always love to learn. I'm passionate about learning. and I got certified with the Western School of Feng Shui, and honestly, it's just like there's been no looking back. I mean, in terms of, wow, I got on this beautiful trajectory of wanting to bring this wisdom and these ideas in a very practical way to other people and really make a difference in a life-enhancing way to the people that I would get to eventually work with, right? And my friends were so excited because they saw me decluttering. I'm driving things to the Goodwill and donations and gifting friends, etc. And they were just like, "Wow, what's going on?" And I got happier, right? They're like, "What has happened to Laura?"
Well, I want you to watch this again.
Right.
Because you are a different person talking about this right now, Laura. You have transformed right before my eyes. Just talking about this awareness, and you're also stimulated, and you're showing your happiness. So I can see what this has done for you, and I'm sure this is what you do for your clients. So speak to us about that a little bit. How has this transformation, because it was, and it still is, even when you talk about it.
Yeah, even now.
So how has this transformation allowed you to impact the lives of others?
Oh, I love that question. I think it's allowed me because I've aligned with my values and my passion, and my sense of inspiration and wanting to be of love and service to other people from a place of confidence and joy in the learning inside of me. And I have such curiosity, right? So anytime that I'm working with another person, I go to those rich questions of, what's working about your space? Do you have any hand-me-downs, right, that you don't like? Or, tell me about this picture on the wall, and I want to learn about what's happening in my clients' lives, right? In all those domains, all those important domains of career, of relationships, of creativity, of abundance, maybe even integrity. Are you living true to yourself? Or is there, I know you had Maribel Cardiz on talking about imposter syndrome, right? Is there a disconnect, right? And honestly, sometimes there's a disconnect between how you want to live your life and what's going on in your physical space. And so if you can get them aligned, that's often what I'm guiding people to do, to start to see their physical spaces in the rooms of their home or their home office. And of course, now through COVID, most of us are working in some space. Maybe it's a guest room, right? Maybe, it's a multi-purpose room, but you're choosing a space to work out of. And is it safe? Is it comfortable? Are you inspired? Are you productive and creative in that home office? So, these are the kinds of questions that I get to ask my clients. And it's been so delicious to see people's lives just open up. Sometimes, Yvonne, simply by decluttering. I mean, I led a class a few months ago, and there was a woman who shared she was finally having people over to her home. She didn't even know that she knew it, but she didn't realize how meaningful that would be to no longer be ashamed about the condition of her home, and have friends and family over, during the window when things seemed to lift and people were, interacting once again. And she was joyful, and to experience that shift in her, right, from the beginning of the class to that fifth session, I'm telling you, it is such a delight. And I continue to learn so much from the people that I'm honored and privileged to work with. There's such a sacred bond of confidentiality and trust, right? Because I know that I'm, either zooming into somebody's, private space and engaging in a very personal conversation. And yet it's so enlivening because when they realize, wow, my love relationship isn't working, maybe because there's just tons of clutter in my house that's causing conflict in my marriage or in my primary love relationship. And once they see that, it's kind of like the light bulb goes off, right? And they realize, wow, if I actually take these actions, it will free up a conversation and space, like literal space for love to be expressed and for experiences to happen. Because when we free ourselves of tending to belongings, we can kind of focus on people and the quality of those relationships, especially if that's something important to somebody. And of course, I ask those questions, right? Like what's happening in your life that you would love to enhance? What would you love to have happen a year from now or 2 years from now? What's different in your home and in the quality of your life? And let's see if we can get those two things, if you will, talking to each other in a very meaningful and empowering way.
That's wonderful. But I'm going to throw in a little question for you. And because my curiosity is genuinely aroused, could you think of what is one of the most surprising things you have found in working with your clients along this line? And as you're thinking, what kind of comes to mind is that a lot of times, even as a coach, you'll ask someone, even a simple question like, what are you passionate about? And, they're like, well, I've never really given it any thought, Right. So in working with clients, what is something that has surprised you maybe more than once?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that moment when people realize that they have permission, like, because they have felt so, as I did too, right? They felt so obligated to hold on to the family picture where everyone looks beautiful, but a fight happened right before everybody put on their happy face. And they have this realization of, wow, I know this is a really pretty picture, but it has this darker cloud around it. What if I replace this with a photograph of all these people that I love that came out of a very joyous, genuinely joyous experience? And it's that moment at which I'm looking at a client, and it's happened time and time again, in which I'm just saying, it's okay. Really, you can replace that image or artwork or just or in some cases it's just simply let it go. Maybe take lots of pictures of the broken rocking chair that your dad made, but he's passed and nobody will ever sit in. Take thousands of pictures if you need to. And it's okay. The love with your dad will always be there. And if you're never ever going to get the chair repaired, and that nobody else in the family wants it, then just let it go. Oh, I'm so sorry. human office.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry. My phone.
All right.
Yeah. So it's that moment of just honoring somebody's process and giving giving them permission. I think I've given myself so much permission to live beyond other people's expectations or beyond someone else's tastes and preferences. But that's a wonderful question. And it honestly has surprised me over and over again, because I didn't realize how much people are needing permission slips or to write them for themselves, to take care of themselves, to have belongings in their space that they love, to let go of objects that they feel obligated to keep, and yet it's their home, right?
Yeah, and I think we could have a long discussion about this whole thing about giving yourself permission, because you're right. This is just one aspect of life. There's so many areas where people fail to give themselves permission because maybe it's a cultural thing. It's something as simple as give yourself permission to say no, and to recognize that no can be a full sentence, because we're raised, oh no, you don't say no, you find a way to do it, and even if you're inconvenienced.
Oh,
So I
yes.
really honor and appreciate that. And I love, Laura, that you were able to take us through a sort of like a holistic view. And as your introduction, the heart is involved, that space is involved, everything is involved in what you do. And I can hear that, I can see that, and I happen to know you in other areas. And I know this is Laura. This is a true Laura. But I've never heard how much this means to you as I did today. And how you support others with this passion, because it truly is a passion. I witnessed a transformation just now.
Yeah.
So Laura, because we are almost out of time, is there any one last point you'd like to share with us? And then at the end of that, just take about a minute or so, please. And then at the end of that, tell us, how can we get in touch with you if you'd like to do so?
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Yvonne. Wow. I guess that, again, that permission slip to, love your space and fall in love with your life. Hopefully a curiosity of, wow, what is happening in my physical space that might be blocking the flow, and what could I let go of with grace and dignity? And then I think there's something about the invitation to create a life that you love living. And it's something that I come back to over and over again. We have one life to live, and to live one that's fulfilling from the inside, from your heart, from your values, and the expression of what you want to create in your physical space. It's permission to live aligned. If that, it can be a little offering there, just an invitation, not a requirement.
Love that. Permission to live alive.
Right.
That is beautiful.
Oh, that you love, yeah. And maybe even create one. And then how people can get in touch with me through my website, cherishyourworld.com. That's the easiest way. And there's also a place that if they would like to sign up for my newsletter, they can do so. It's on the home page of cherishyourworld.com.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And I'll put that, when we're done, I'll go ahead and put that in the comments as well. Wow, wow, wow. And whoa again. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And, what I love about talking with you, and I know my audience will appreciate this too, is that you're so calm, yet so passionate. You're able to transmit your passion, even though you're calm about it. And it gives a sense of feeling confident in whatever you do. You feel safe. And that's a word you have used many times, that people feel safe with you. And I can see also why your clients would love you, because they feel safe. They can share with you what has held them back, that they're not even aware of, right in their environment, their immediate environment, their immediate surroundings. So thank you. Thank you for being my wonderful guest today. And I look forward to, it's a live, so I'm just going to add a couple of things to it. And I invite viewers to watch. And if you're watching the replay, please just type in #replay. Thank you, Laura, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you to those of you who are watching live or will be watching again. See you again soon.
Thank you.